Did the prison system develop as reformers like Mrs. Fry hoped? New prisons were established, the convict prisons called penitentiaries. On arrival, prisoners were washed, their heads shaved, and they were given numbers, uniforms, and masks. This was to show they were making a new start. They were to spend time alone in separate cells to think about their crime. At first sight, this looks like exactly what reformers like Mrs. Fry wanted. But in a letter in 1843, she wrote about Pentonville Prison, "The dark cells should never exist in a Christian and civilized country. Even the sight of the sky is precluded. I think a prison for separate confinement should be constructed that the culprits may at least see the sky." For the first 18 months of their sentence, prisoners were locked up completely alone to think about their life and crimes. Mrs. Fry said, "I am certain that separate confinement produces an unhealthy state of mind." She was right. During their 18 months of isolation, prisoners suffered mental breakdowns and some committed suicide. But the influence of reformers like Mrs. Fry was in decline. Fear of crime was growing, particularly among the prosperous middle class who found themselves living in crowded towns, close to people who were often very poor and people who did not necessarily obey the law. These dangerous classes, as they were called, were seen as people needing to be punished, not redeemed. An inquiry into prison discipline decided that prison was not sufficiently dreaded. New laws introduced changes. Prisoners were not to spend their time alone in thought, but in monotonous, unproductive tasks like turning the crank handle or walking on the treadmill. Prisons were not to be places of redemption, but of hard fare, hard labor, hard bed. Between 1750 and 1850, the punishment of crime in Britain changed dramatically. Imprisonment took over as the main punishment for serious crime. But in the prisons of the mid-19th century, little remained of the early reformers' ideas of redemption. It's debatable whether the system of hard fare, hard labor, hard bed was any more humane than that of 100 years before.